Ariadne's Labyrinth, Kłębki Ariadne, is the third book in Małgorzata Pośpiech's Kępno cycle, which I've been following from the very beginning with growing interest. As in the previous volumes, The Small Town and The Seventh Circle, the author leads us through a labyrinth of facts, fictions, memories, police documents, and dreamlike fantasies. Real worlds intermingle with semi-real and wholly fantastical ones. At times she speaks in the first person, at times through fictional characters who may or may not serve as her literary masks. The constant effort of memory and imagination, the reconstruction of the past, summons visions that are sometimes horrifying and sometimes Arcadian, though even the latter seem to be stained with anxiety and darkness. The aim of this complex game is to reach the truth about events that took place in Kępno in the first years after the war, and about the role of her father, Edmund Pośpiech, played in them. It is an attempt to unravel the mystery of her own anxieties, the persistently returning images, the strange and emotionally draining connection with a man she barely knew and with events that unfolded before she was born. Her father was the great absence in Pośpiech's life, a void filled with hazy imaginings, a dotted outline with an unknown center. A young Home Army soldier, after the war he briefly worked in the local communist security office in Kępno, where he witnessed cruel crimes and extraordinary, even by the security standards, sadism of local officers. He joined an anti-communist underground organization, arrested because of a colleague's betrayal, tortured during interrogation. He was sent to prison in Wronki, where he endured years of unimaginable torment. Released under the 1956 amnesty, he emerged a broken man, unable to function normally in society. He behaved strangely, boasting of his underground past, threatening revenge, claiming to know smuggling routes across the border. He again drew the attention of the authorities, came into conflict with the law, spent several more months in prison. Finally, he was killed, struck by a motorcycle, in an accident that might or might not have been staged. A drunk and a troublemaker in the eyes of often unfriendly witnesses, and yet a father, the husband of an intelligent and sensitive woman, a hero and a victim, whose fate somehow shaped the author's own life and character. What is my memory and what is their memory? Mothers, fathers, grandmothers. Which fears are mine and which are theirs? She asks at one point. Stirring and unsettling these layers of memory and the unconscious is a dangerous undertaking, especially since in this third book, the author knows more. She becomes, in a sense, a participant in the story she tells. Writing the book, trying to reach the truth, was like an illness, she adds. There is at least a partial liberation which comes precisely through participation, and not only in the role of a researcher. By undertaking the arduous task of legally rehabilitating her father, Pośpiech becomes, in a sense, his heir. She can say what he was not allowed to say. She can demand moral redress. As in one of Czesław Miłosz's poems, the words are written down, the deed, the date. Suddenly, for the first time, I feel my father's presence, a bond with him. He is with me. I'm not alone, she writes upon receiving a favorable court ruling. Ariadne's Labyrinth resembles The Little Town, the first part of the cycle, more than the documentary, factually overwhelming Seventh Circle. The book is more personal and lyrical. We find here the same fluid interpretation of worlds, the same dream of a childhood that perhaps never existed, or existed quite differently, though it is remembered so vividly. They are reflections on the very process of remembering, composed of fragments of images, sounds, scents, and other people's recollections. There is much sadness and pain in the book, but also beauty and calm. It has heightened self-awareness that throws into relief all the previously sketched yarns and reveals their hidden interconnections. A telemachy, the search for a father, the search for oneself, the search for a thread in a dark labyrinth, the drilling through the geological layers of life, an individual life, but also the life of generations, some dark and some bright, fossilized and still living, and the discovery of points where they unexpectedly intertwine. By evoking the emotional landscape, the color and texture of growing up and coming of age in late communist Poland, it also reveals a story about our post-Stalinist, curious, striving, but still politically fettered generations. How many splendid alternative worlds we were able to invent for ourselves while evoking the emotional landscape, the color and texture of growing up and coming of age in late communist Poland. It also reads as a story about our post-Stalinist, curious, striving, but still politically fettered generations. How many splendid alternative worlds we were able to invent for ourselves while remaining at the same time in a state of chronic skepticism and resignation. Avid readers of Borges and Proust, imprisoned in a reality we could no longer consider our own. Ariadne's Labyrinth is also a book about emigration, about the constant transactions between here and there, between who we were then and who we are now. It contains sentences striking in their poetic and descriptive precision, such as coins jingled in paper caps, held in hands trembling with misfortune and falsehood, about beggars on New York subway, or they leap like two large wounded birds, about people dancing in the street. And there is something in this book that I, at least, did not notice in the previous ones. Ecstasy, but not the naive kind, moved by its own emotion, rather a mature ecstasy, aware of what usually comes before and after such moments. It is a small book that opens perspectives onto large matters that perhaps have not been yet sufficiently described.